and welcome to our fourth installation of Coming Clean with the Dirty Dozen, where we put the finest explorers twice a week into your living room. My name is Aron Arngrimsson, and I'm your host for tonight. And before we get started with everything, I'd love to introduce our crew that's behind the scenes. Well, just setting up right now. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Vic. How are you guys doing?
Hey, everyone.
All good, thanks. Hey, Aron.
Great. So for those of you that haven't met Jeff or Vic already, Jeff is our producer and operator. He's operating this show back in Chepstow. And Vic is our producer and content creator. She's going to be monitoring your comments on Facebook and pick out the best ones, which we can ask Jim and Paul during the broadcast.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you during the show. Anyway, before we get started too much on the actual show, for those of you that are tuning in, I just wanted to fill you quickly in on what Dirty Dozen is. So usually we're an expedition company. Usually we find ourselves in Truck Lagoon, in Bikini Atoll, Galapagos, Myanmar, Chernobyl, you name it. But obviously due to COVID-19, we're all inside now. And one of the things our team was thinking about is, well, we're all on the inside and not outside enjoying these great adventures, is what can we do to connect with our diving community? And we decided we wanted to bring all our special guests and friends straight into your living room. So here we are. And we've had a great 3 episodes so far with some fantastic guests, including Jill Heinerth, we've had Mark Powell, and we had Matt Jevon talking about really interesting topics. And tonight's topic is nonetheless interesting. It's actually one I've been looking to for a while. We have Jim Standing and Paul Strikey, 2 good friends of mine that run Fourth Element. So for those of you, in case you haven't heard what Fourth Element is, it began in 1999 with a conversation over a post-dive beer in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, where Jim and Paul set out to design high-quality clothing with a simple, diving-oriented style. Their technical range is based around the principles of performance, innovation, and function, using the latest fabric technology in unique combinations and designs. The Fourth Element range revolutionizes thermal protection and keeps us diving for longer. Fourth Element is aware of the many and complex environmental issues that the industry faces as a business, from compostable packaging to recycled swimwear and supporting various environmental charities. They believe in doing everything they can to preserve our oceans for the future. Fourth Element is now distributed in 52 countries and has a reputation for producing innovative, high-performance thermal protection and clothing for divers and water sports enthusiasts. Personally, I think they have the most innovative garments in the whole diving community. And without any further ado, I'd like to say welcome to Jim and Paul. Are you guys there somewhere?
Hi.
Hi.
How's it going, boys? How are you? Where are you?
Well, we're in Cornwall and in the UK, and it's just start the evening here, and thanks very much for having us on here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's strange that we have to see each other online. I mean, we could have seen each other at multiple occasions already, be it Tech Dive USA or others. But having said that, we haven't seen each other maybe for 2 months and something. How has lockdown been in Cornwall, out in the country?
Well, I think we were actually relatively lucky being out in the country and have wide open spaces around us. And I feel very sorry for those people who are in built-up areas or in blocks of flats. And so, I think lockdown for us, although obviously a little bit restrictive, it's really not as unpleasant as it could be for many people.
And having said that, you both have beautiful families. How have you been entertaining yourselves? And you're always usually on the move, to being at home for extended periods of time.
Well, it's definitely something that we're not used to, and certainly my family are, I hope, enjoying having me around a little bit more. I think they are. I'm certainly enjoying being around a lot more, and certainly, one of those things that it always seems like you're dashing off somewhere to do this and do that. And although it sounds a little bit selfish, just having a little bit more time with the kids without having to rush around has been fantastic. Just as a family, I mean, my wife's looking after the sort of the houses while I'm working from home, and then we still manage to have this, a great sort of family life. So yeah, I feel almost guilty for saying that there are some aspects of this terrible pandemic that actually are beneficial for us.
And I couldn't agree more personally. I mean, I can just say for myself, I'm getting married, in a year or so, and having the chance to be locked down with your partner for a couple of months is probably the ultimate test, and knowing if it's the right thing, right?
Got to hope that you've made your mind up before that. But yeah,
yeah, but a secondary test, you could always say that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, how's work? Tell us a little bit about the business, how it's evolved and adapted during this COVID indoor landscape.
Well, I mean, for sure, Jim and I have continued to be pretty much as busy as ever. And although enjoying our family life time, I suppose, being able to spend time at home, it's been in many respects work and business as usual, trying hard to continue the engagement with the diving community. Obviously, we've got various projects ongoing, product development, design time. These are all things that can continue. And of course, supporting dealers that are open, the few that are in various parts of the world.
And that's, all of us at work, at least we can pick up on all the projects that are on the back burner and have been for a while. But before we dip deeper into Fourth Element, I'd like to find out more for the viewers about your roles in Fourth Element. So, for example, Jim, if you'd start and tell us what your role is in the business.
Yeah, sure. The two of us are the founders, and back in the day, our role was to get the project going, but now over the years it evolved. I think originally it mostly evolved just because I was the guy who didn't have a family at the time and could go off and travel around and be the salesman. So I became responsible for sales and marketing, and that sort of set me in my path now, and I am now sales and marketing director, for want of a better expression. And that, those are the aspects that I take care of on a day-to-day basis, although we're both involved in the overall running of it still.
Yeah, exactly as Jim says, the early days, although we both went out and sold to try and get the business up and running, Jim became the guy on the road mostly, and having a young family, it made a lot more sense for me to be around at home. So yeah, our roles developed, and I guess we still share a great deal of we make a lot of decisions together, and yet obviously have divided responsibilities, you might say, to be a little bit more efficient if possible. But yeah, it's been a development over time.
So one of the last things I need to find out, and this is something that's been growing online the last couple of weeks. Under Bathwater 2020, what's this all about?
Well, it was just something that it was one of those mad ideas that when you're just thinking, well, how do we engage with divers, and how do we keep people thinking about and talking about diving when they really can't go diving? And many of us have taken have dabbled with underwater photography. Many of us have got a camera, and in fact, as the technology's got more and more accessible, with the likes initially, I suppose, of GoPro, but now even more excitingly with Paralens, becoming even more of a tool as well as just a camera, we're all becoming image makers. So it just seemed like sensible to encourage people to have a go at carrying on creating images with this equipment that they've got essentially sitting around and gathering dust. And what better way to do that than to get it wet in the bathtub and attempt to engage people's creativity. And
I have to say, I've seen some fantastic entries. One memorable one that sticks out is Mikko Pasi, a good buddy of mine in Thailand. he took a softened lime drum and a seal, and it looks like it. I thought it was a seal in Antarctic when I first opened it up. It was really, really well done. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of absolute stunners, and there's some that really kind of play with you as well, even to the point where it's not just the image making, but it's also the storytelling that goes with it. There's one a shot of a squid that I had to do the double take of, which was supposedly a squid shot in black water, and this little story that went with it, and then of course realizing that it's a fishing lure instead rather than actually a squid. It sort of adds to the fun of it all and adds to the creativity. And yeah, it's been fantastic to see what people have come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And having said that, I want to go behind the scenes for a second here before we get too far. Jeff, are you there somewhere? Our producer Jeff in Chepstow talking about taking dust off the camera. So he has a production company and he has a red digital cinema camera that's usually reserved for Hollywood movies and the rest of it. And Jeff, what are you actually doing back there?
Well, I spent the day in the bathroom setting up this lovely scene. We've got a wreck, obviously, being the Dirty Dozen expeditions. And here's a Lauer probe lens, which is quite interesting because it's 24mm, which is quite wide, but it can also do a macro shot, which is, we can see now, there you go. There's a little insight, and as we are the Dirty Dozen and we want to do some wreck penetration, you can get in and get some quite cool details.
Well, you can clearly see we had nothing to do this afternoon than to play with cinema equipment and surface cables, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's wired back to my office with the cable. It's normally for the director to kind of see what's going on and shout their kind of instructions. But there you go. That's our bathwater entry.
Well, there you go. That's what we thought. Get a bit of creativity going. We didn't really imagine tens and tens of thousands of pounds worth of camera equipment, but why not? And it's great, and it really is great to see how so many people have interpreted it differently. It's brilliant.
So, without any further ado, I think it's time for you, Jim and Strikey, to come clean with the Dirty Dozen. So let's get started.
Okay.
So let's start from the beginning. How did you start, and how did you identify the gap in the market?
Well, this is where we obviously most people know that it started over a post-dive beer and Sharm el Sheikh, but that was largely the content of that conversation was about me feeling really cold, having completed my IDC in Gildenborough in March earlier that year. And just, basically spending most of the time feeling really uncomfortable and wondering why I didn't have any better thermal gear to wear. And then, as the course and the IDC progressed, realizing that, well, basically nobody seemed to have the right gear. And so that was one of the kind of moments where we felt that perhaps, there was basically this sort of gear was lacking in the world of scuba. And so that was definitely a moment where we considered, and Jim obviously was very much more aware of a lot of the lifestyle products, which he felt that, I'm talking for him now, and he's saying that.
Go ahead.
Jim, do you want to carry on with your thoughts on that side of it?
Well, I guess, I've been traveling around the world and diving around the world and had got to this point of feeling like there wasn't anything out there that really spoke to me as a diver about the way I felt about diving. And in fact, the big surf brands, they all had they all had this incredible line of surfwear that surfers wore, and it kind of said something about them. And we didn't really have it, or at least nothing that I really liked. And rather naively, I think we just thought, well, maybe we could come up with something. Maybe we could come up with great performing products that people would be interested in, and that people would value like us. Maybe it's the right brand. Maybe it's something that makes them feel good, or maybe it's something that fundamentally and most importantly improves their diving, makes them feel better about their diving.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. What was the first product you actually made, and how did you do it?
Well, basically, we started off with thermal gear, and we researched various fabrics, high performance fabrics that were available in the outdoor sport world, and basically started to investigate what it would take and how a product could be better than what was already out there. And so Xerotherm was our first technical product, and obviously it's still running today.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
So 19, 20 years later. But that was the first product, and Thermocline was really the second. That was also one of the early products that we developed in those first few months, really.
So tell me, a little bit about your first dive show. I think it's London Dive Show 2001. Am I right?
Well,
And tell us, like, how many products did you bring? Did you feel uncomfortable around these juggernaut industry and personalities? And like, how was it? How did you feel?
oh, totally. But I mean, it wasn't. Actually, the first one that we went to was the Birmingham Dive Show in 2000, and we only had a brand, an idea, and some T-shirts and some hoodies in a backpack. And really naively, we wandered around the show and talked to people and tried to get people interested, whilst getting a feel for it. And then, with a style that I suppose we've adopted ever since, we just blagged our way into the exhibitors party and chatted to people and just kind
I've
of.
never seen you do that before.
Yeah, exactly, and we've never looked back. But yeah, the first real show where we had a stand was in 2001 at the London show in 2001, and yeah, we had a small stand with still only showing the technical product because we were waiting for our first production run at that point to actually be delivered. So we had some T-shirts and some hoodies, and we chatted. We chatted to people. And amazingly, lo and behold, we sold the gear, and we had a good show, and we got to meet a lot of people who at the time were completely daunted by not only the big personalities in the sport, but also that by the people representing these big brands, most of whom have become colleagues and friends.
And what a difference 20 years makes, right? So if you take us a little bit about the journey from 20 years ago, from the base layer to the Arctic to the Halo and so on and so on. How do you feel about developing these products? What was the process, ups and downs?
What can we say? I mean, there was a need for performance product of that, we were sure. And I guess having launched Xerotherm and overcoming those initial objections, where people were, we would approach and try and explain how the Xerotherm worked, and obviously people say, well, it's not very thick, so how's that going to keep you warm? And then you went through all of that kind of process, and obviously nobody had ever heard of us as a brand, so it was a kind of challenging start, and we were just kind of I suppose everything, all energy was devoted in developing a brand identity, trying to break into the market with technical fabrics, high performance product. And in the early stages, I suppose you were just sort of set out to do the best you could, and there was no expectation other than the expectation we put on ourselves. And I'd say that's a significant difference now, where we are 20 years down the line, having built some sort of reputation for producing product that fundamentally works. Now, of course, when we launch anything, we need to be a lot more confident that it will work. We do a lot more product testing. We do a lot more development time, because now we have something to protect, as opposed to just kind of going out there and giving a shot, really. And I would say that's a significant change, and in some respects, considerably greater pressure than starting out.
Yeah, it's true. I guess when we got started, nobody really, nobody really knew anything about us. So one of the principles that we kind of adopted from the word go was to say, what we make and what we try to make has to have a purpose, has to make a difference. And a lot of the time that was the thing that was guided by our own experience as divers. I mean, Paul, having been a diver for a long time, grown up diving in Cornwall, and me grown up dreaming about becoming a scuba diver. But once we'd actually really started diving ourselves, it was our experiences that drove the development of all of the early products. All of those ideas were from us thinking, well, how do we solve this? What's happening to us during a dive? Why is this important to us? And down to, I mean, I was the test monkey for the Proteus wetsuit, having come up with this mad idea for the neck design. We had to make sure that it worked. And so I was packed off with a prototype suit off to Malta to go and do as many dives as I possibly could to try and prove this, this suit's value. And as we've grown, that is still the guiding principle of why we make a product and how we make a product and how we think about a product. It's our own experience, sure, but also now increasingly it's the experience of people like you, Aron, people like the divers that we work with and sponsor, the likes of Jill Heineth, the likes of Phil Short, people like that who are out there doing dives in extreme circumstances that frankly, Strikey and I really only dream of these days in terms of those things, and I've done some extreme diving in some really cold water, but it's a while ago now. And we rely on the feedback and the experience of guys who are, actually experiencing this stuff in extreme circumstances to say, this could be better. This is what I need. This isn't quite right. Can we try this? What do you think about this idea? And we sit and we listen, and it's our objective now to keep making product that is an improvement and that has a reason to be there, and trying to find the solutions to those problems or challenges that are set to us. So it's the same guiding fundamental principle. It's just done with a different a crucible, if you like, in which the ideas are formed into products.
And having said that, how the diver shapes the equipment, or the title of our show tonight, right? We should maybe dip into some product origin stories. So if I say Rick Stanton, what do you say?
Halo 3D, 100%. I mean, I think it was me who saw the photo of Rick wearing a doormat around his neck. He tied it on with a rope, and he, that was how he was staying warm. This was the guy who was like, one of the leading foremost cave divers with a doormat. And we looked at what he was doing, and it became clear to us that this was a principle of basically preventing the squeeze on his chest. Of the dry suit undergarments being compressed on his chest while the air migrated into the back of the dry suit. And so Paul and I sat down and came up with an idea to emulate this in a much better way. And using Paul's background in sports science, kind of working out which muscle groups had the most exposure, what we needed to do in terms of actually mapping the body in order to make a better product. But that was something that we both really, we took the inspiration from somebody else who solved the problem in an entirely inelegant way, and tried to come up with something that made it accessible and elegant and much more comfortable for everyone.
And I think you've done, and that is one of the cornerstones that I really admire about Fourth Element. You can look at a company like Apple, for example, which I'm a prisoner of, unfortunately, in their ecosystem. But I don't find that they, for example, listen a lot to their clients, because we often scream for the changes that are needed, and they don't listen. They just come out with what their designers think is appropriate, and so be it. With you guys, you listen to the users constantly, and one of the stories could be, for example, Phil Short with his J2. I mean, how did he have to come up to you and say, "I'm spending weeks in Mexico, I smell"? Like, how did that go?
Well, I think basically, that's a good example, but overall, it's listening to divers, and that's what's so important about attending shows, and all of that is informing our next products and so on. Phil, as I think he spoke to Jim mostly about this, but having the J2 Cave system project, and needing something that was going to keep their team comfortable and free from too much additional growth that they didn't want. This was a challenge to actually to achieve something, a product, a garment that would actually keep the skin clean in basically in an environment that was really just sort of perfect for things to grow on your skin you didn't want. So that was in effect the kind of challenge that we enjoyed, and basically went to work at how we could actually create something that would achieve the objective, and hence J2 was born.
And to be honest, I'm really proud to say at this point that the Dirty Dozen have managed to penetrate the J2 as any of my customers. You can comment if you want in the comment sections, guys. Has smelt me running around on the dive deck and had the will to throw up at several instances.
Hey, look, it's good, but it's not that good.
And when we're in the water for like 5 hours a day, we have to do something about this waffle effect. I look like something that should be served on a plate when I come out of the water.
and don't ever wear it around in a non-diving context, because it is a little bit see-through. So you're not taking any prisoners with it either.
Yeah, no, I've fallen into that trap a couple of times. So I think before we continue, I want to bring us back up to Vic. Vic, are you there somewhere? Is she coming in? There she is. Hey.
Hey.
How's it going? Do you have any questions from the viewers for Jim and Strike?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Michael Mendino. He is asking, Fourth Element has pioneered the lifestyle marketing in the diving industry with photographers like Luke Inman. Was that a conscious move?
Well, yes, it was for sure. I think originally, right at the start, I was the photographer and Paul was the model, and for sure, Luke certainly upped our game in that sense. But no, I mean, one of the things that going right back to that time, drinking the beer in Sharm el Sheikh, was that we felt and still feel that as divers that we have this identity, whether we see ourselves as the James Bond wanting to get out, or the Jacques Cousteau wannabe explorer, or indeed somebody who just loves being under the water and seeing incredible creatures. We all have something that we identify with that really becomes a part of us, and this is something that perhaps I have this thing that I think everybody sort of raises their eyebrows a little bit when I say it, but that when you learn to dive, well, certainly it happened to me, you become a diver, and I sort of liken it to being bitten by the radioactive spider that bit Peter Parker and turned him into Spider-Man. Something fundamental happened to me on my first dive. I became different. Something changed in my DNA. Maybe it was the extra nitrogen. I don't know, but ever since then, I've been a diver, and it's been a big part of my identity. You go to a party and you start talking to somebody, and it's not very long before a diver tells you they're a diver. It's not quite as bad as when a fighter pilot tells you they're a fighter pilot, but it isn't very long before a diver tells you that they're a diver, and that's because it's so important to them. And yeah, so promoting the lifestyle and the enjoyment of it, and the excitement of it, why not? It's a fantastic, fun thing that we do, and an exciting thing that we do. It's who we are. We're divers, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. He also asks, do you think this has helped Fourth Element to build a global brand?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, the image is critical, isn't it? The company image, the ethos, the engagement with your customer base, and for sure the kind of how we presented ourselves in that respect. Because the t-shirt designs hopefully are mostly quite thoughtful, so that it does actually say something about the company as well. And it's a billboard on some level. What you put out there as a lifestyle product is says a lot more about the company than just the actual t-shirt as such. So yeah, for sure.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.
All right, cheers for that, Vic. All right, let's get back to the products. I got some questions because I'm curious. If we're talking about the Halo, I've used this thing for for many years in some demanding conditions. I think the most demanding was in Finland in OMO, and it definitely saved my ass there. I can tell you that much. Now you got this new product called Halo AR. So it's the warmest undersuit ever developed with one of the most insulating materials that exist, which was originally used in space exploration and cryogenics. Right. Tell me a little bit more about that, and how did you do research and development for this product?
Well, I think I'll just start simply by saying that it's a product that we have been working towards and working on for very many years, and always had this idea in the back of our minds. But fundamentally, it boils down to two things, really. Number one is that Strikey is always out there looking for new technologies, and looking at what's out there, and looking, especially what's out there in the world of insulations. I mean, to the point of like reading bizarre magazines like Future Materials and things like that, that don't really seem to have a place in the world of scuba diving necessarily, and possibly just having that willingness to look outside the traditional box. And then the other one is, of course, that we're always looking to improve what we're doing, and our products can't afford to stand still either, just like we can.
Excellent. I mean, it's interesting because the industry is, I've noticed throughout the years, there are a lot of the same products come again and again, repackaged, new format. It is essential that we keep on innovating and do exactly the things you mentioned. And having said that, was this product maybe the one that took the longest time to develop, or what was the most challenging design? Like, what was the trickiest product you ever had?
Challenges in terms of trying to ensure that the insulating material is appropriate, or can be made into something that's appropriate to be worn as a soft garment, and constructing the actual suit is quite a intricate process in order to make it a wearable, something that's comfortable to actually wear under a dry suit. That's definitely has been one of the more intricate, challenging products. But basically, it's quite surprising how challenging even quite simple garments, on the face of it, simple garments are, just to get the pattern right. We've got a really kind of highly qualified and highly capable design team. And Jim and I will both come up with ideas, and we are looking at, as Jim says, sort of future materials. Both Jim and I brainstorm about what products we think we do need, but then we will often then go to our design team and just say, look, this is what we want to achieve, and how are we going to achieve it, and get them involved, which is obviously critical to the process, and for them to bring their skills and talents into that. And a lot of product can live and die by the cut of the actual pattern. You have the concept and you can have the materials, but if they're not put together effectively, then people aren't going to enjoy wearing them, and the function starts to be undermined as a result.
That's really interesting, actually. Having said that, Ocean Positive. Okay, so was this always a dream? Or did the ideas evolve as your brand kept growing? The way the hammer shapes the hand. How did it go?
Well, I mean, exactly that. I think, the dives have always shaped the product, but this was something even more exciting. And I think right from the word go, we were proud of our association with the ocean, and our feeling that we needed to do more to protect it. And we worked a lot with the Shark Trust and the Plastic Oceans Foundation in the early days. But Ocean Positive kind of came as this opportunity for us to talk more directly to divers, because the origins of this came from the fact that there were these incredible teams of guys out there, men and women out there diving often to extreme technical depths, pulling up ghost fishing net, and it was recycled. It was being recycled. So literally, the product of dives we could use this recycled product that would come up from dyes. We could use it to create a product line. And we started out with swimwear and kind of introduced this concept of ocean positive, but literally driven by the origination of this product. And that was, I mean, it sparked what I can only say is a paradigm shift really in the business and the way that we've approached the design process from there on in terms of the way we designed the company, the way we design, everything that we do. And I think that has been one of the greatest changes driven by what's going on in the world that we've made in the last 5 years.
I definitely agree on that one. There's a quick question coming in from Ben Burns. He's asking,
Hi, Ben.
I know the new Halos have been delayed with everything that's going on at the moment. Do you have anything you can say about when they will be available?
Jim, you're basically planning on, it's going to be more like autumn now, isn't it? Is that probably autumn. Fair to say? It's been a great shame that it has been delayed, but we're obviously trying to get them into stores and onto the market as quickly as we can. But it's probably going to be autumn now. So many elements of the supply chain have been affected by the global pandemic that it obviously has had an effect.
One thing I definitely found interesting, I'm obviously in the travel business side of things for the diving industry, is there was a humongous gap and downturn when the whole thing started. At this point, I think people are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, have a little more confidence, and my inbox is rolling in quite nicely. And I think people have started to dream again. They've started to think there is a light at the end of the tunnel there somewhere. And that's one of the reasons I started to do this show, is to keep communicating with the audience and just let's try and look forward to something, because if we just sit in here and look at the wall all day, I'm gonna go crazy. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think it's true, and I think that's part of why things like the under bathwater competition was successful, is that we do want to be transported outside the four walls that we occupy at the moment, and there's nothing better than dreaming, and in fact there's nothing more powerful than the imagination of where we want to go. And I think in particular the Dirty Dozen, what you're selling is this incredible sort of dream of what's possible and these dream destinations. And although the video that's playing now, which is the the conversation between Saeed and myself to sort of get people inspired and get people to thinking about what's under the water, and I'm grateful to him for sort of throwing these ideas around with me. I think what we all need to do, what we all need, is these opportunities to think a little bit bigger and think a little bit further afield. Right at the beginning of this of the pandemic, when we realized that we were going to be in effect locked down for a while in one way or another, it was obviously a terrible thing, observing what was happening in China and then in Italy and in Spain with this loss of life. But we felt so insulated from it at the time that we didn't really dream that this was going to be something that affects us. And now I think we're at a point now where we are all sharing this, and we all have to kind of share our dreams as well, because we're not all experiencing the effects of this in the same way. But somehow, I think somehow it's why divers do so well in an international context with each other, because we can share these things that we experience underwater, and we share this passion for it, which does enable us to go anywhere with anyone and pretty much enjoy ourselves. And that's what we all are looking forward to doing again.
Absolutely. And before we get a little bit more into that, I want to ask probably the last product question. And I'm not sure if you've ever talked so much about this before. The surface suit. What is it?
Well, it's obviously it's a alternative to neoprene. It's a natural rubber, natural latex that is in effect grown as opposed to made. And we have been experimenting with this for quite some time. And obviously it falls very squarely into the ocean positive element of our line. It includes not only the natural rubber as a replacement for neoprene, but it also is made using recycled polyester for the linings. And so it's a very and water-based print and dyes. So it's very economically sound. It's a sustainable product, and is, you know, really a considerable move on from standard neoprene. And we've been, say, testing it now for quite a while, because, as I was saying earlier, you know, it's very important for us now not to put something on the market that we haven't got, you know, complete confidence in. And it's actually holding up incredibly well to some pretty robust use from dive instructors.
And see from the comments that we've got that Steve Tippett, who's our test diver, is actually online telling us how much he loves the suit.
Oh, really?
He's been testing for a while. So thanks, Steve. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you for all of that. For those that don't know him, Steve is based out in the Caymans, and whenever we have a product that kind of fits into the warm water kind of territory, we ask Steve to put it through its paces. Exposing it to UV, exposing it to chlorinated water, as well as taking it diving. And those that don't know him, he's a experienced rebreather, instructor, trainer, who probably can break anything if we ask him nicely. But usually we ask him nicely not to. So yeah, thanks, Steve.
Nice one. Well, since we're on the guest comments, I got Martin Hansen. He's asking, I'm guessing he has a Halo already. How much better insulation? Do you have any data? How much better insulation the Halo AR gives versus the Halo 3D?
Well, our main test guy here is Tony Reed, who's on our dry suit team, and another very experienced rebreather diver. He did a lot of the initial testing for us, and we've had some feedback since then to corroborate this. But in terms of bulk and buoyancy, it's approximately half the buoyancy of the Halo 3D. And the warmth, well, Tony will tell us that it's much warmer, to the point where this winter he was diving with just the Halo AR with no hood and no gloves, which is pretty much unheard of in the UK. I mean, I think that's lunacy, but it's certainly much warmer than the Halo 3D.
Nice one, excellent. Oh, thanks, Martin, for the question. So, Mission 2020, let's talk about this for a little bit. Let's cover some ground. Who is involved? How have other brands risen to the challenge of going plastic free?
Can you kick us off, Jim?
Oh, sure. Okay, I'll kick us off. Yeah. Well, Mission 2020 really has become a global dive community project, which started out with us sort of attempting to codify what we wanted to do with our single-use plastic packaging. But for us as a company, we pledged to eliminate it by 2020. And we also, but during that process, it kind of evolved into something else for us as well. And one of those, it's one of those areas that once you've been down the rabbit hole, you can't come back. You've got to keep going. And as we developed our own ideas of how we could be a better company and how we could be better custodians of the ocean, we realized we had to make better products. We had to package all of our products better. We had to source our products better. But equally, these were problems that faced all of our colleagues and competitors. And so we decided to expand this vision, if we could, and introduce it to everyone in the dive industry, and said, you know, if you want to get involved and make a pledge to do something different, then please join us, and we'll celebrate this together, and we'll work towards this together, and we'll share information. We tell other brands where we're getting our materials from, where we're getting our packaging from, and it's a wonderful collaboration that stems all the way from the big training agencies, the PADI, GUE, and of this world, PADIs and GUEs of this world, right the way down to the individual instructor who's just teaching people to be more responsible, teaching people to be more, more careful when they're diving, thinking about damaging the reef, but also encouraging them not to use single-use plastic. And it's certainly things that we, it's a huge challenge, but it has brought our industry and brought our community together in a more positive way than perhaps we were expecting as well.
And just listening to this, it's a perfect answer to what we were speaking about 30 minutes ago when you were at London Dive Show in 2001. I mean, how things have changed, and 20 years is a devotion. What kind of drives you to carry on?
Strikey.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think the fundamental thing is we both still really enjoy it. And I was saying to my wife just recently, there's not a day that's gone by that I haven't actually looked forward to getting into the office and getting on with whatever projects are in progress. And I think it is the same for Jim. We both really enjoy what we're doing, and I feel that we probably both still feel that we've got work to do, and we haven't quite got to where we ultimately want Fourth Element to get to, I guess, just in the way that the brand's growing, and we I guess want to see it grow further. It's very exciting. It can be quite rewarding at times. It's also, of course, quite hard work at times, but that's these things. You can't create things of value without actually putting the hours and putting the time into it. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if Jim's got anything more to add than that.
I guess we're always learning, and I think that's partly part and parcel of it. Is that it is a learning experience. I noticed in the comments and the questions there was a question there that said, is there anything that we look back on and deem as failures or learning experiences? And I think that we are probably here because we learn from those failures, and there's certainly been products over the years that haven't worked and performed as well as we like. One of our undergarments, the Sub X undergarment, was so big and so warm that some people had to buy a new dry suit to go over the top of it. And so but at the same time, we had people call us up and say how it pretty much saved their life because they got into some difficulty with a flooded undergarment in sub-zero temperatures and felt like we'd actually, it had done the job. But we learned a lot then about making sure that hubris didn't get in the way, because I think what we did then was responded to somebody saying, oh yeah, well, the Arctic's not as good as something like that. We've got, it's not the warmest thing on the market. So we thought, right, okay, let's make something that's the warmest thing on the market. Let's go for it. And we may have gone a little bit too far.
Overbaked it, so to speak.
Yeah. So that was certainly an example of a product that we learned from, and hopefully, and we also learned the benefit of looking around and seeing that we had an influence in the market, and that was probably the first product that was copied by one of our competitors, and they copied it so perfectly that I got very upset at the time, but then realized that they were probably going to be left with 2,000 of these suits left to sell because they were too big and too bulky to go under any undersuit, under any dry suit. Right. So it was a bit of a relief in a sense. So that we thought to ourselves, we could just keep designing some dud products every now and then, but thought better of it and just try and stick to doing the best we can each time.
So, in the brochures now, you have like Miss England, in the front cover and all the rest of it. But there is a backstory to this. There are the original FE models. I mean, how deep do I have to dig on Google before I see you in a bikini there, Jim?
There's hopefully no photos of me in a bikini, although I did notice that you were in contact with Stephen Whelan earlier today, so I'm not going to take a chance on that.
There's one right there. Yeah.
There is that photo there is taken on Lizard Point, the most southerly point of the UK. And taken by me of Strikey in the first Ceratherm, and it was we were.
Didn't exactly launch my international modelling career, did it?
Well, I don't know. Didn't launch my photography career either. But no. But one of the things that's been really important for us over the years is when we've been working, working with models. Sure, I mean, yes, Charlotte was Miss England, but she's also a scuba diver. She's also, she's a rescue diver. She knows how to handle the gear, and we've always spent, it's always been important for us to actually identify people who are the real deal, whether that's within our own team. Most of our employees, most of our staff are divers, and if they're not, we pay for them to learn to dive, and we encourage that. But beyond that, we also look for those people who are really competent at what they do, and we're backed by this phenomenal team. And when we start to select when we start to look for new members of our team, or we start to look for models, we start from the spaces of who are they and what do they do. We try to do that. All of the models you're seeing there, from Ramva, who was in the previous photo, who is in our sales team. There's the lady in the photo there was a dive master in Iceland. The lady in the photo here is an instructor, I believe, in Indonesia. And so those are the sort of we try to keep it real, if you like.
Yeah, of course. And having said that, kind of to summarize our little chat here, what would you both think individually your career highlights have been in the last 20 years with Fourth Element, and how do the next 20 years look ahead?
Go ahead, Strikey.
Well, the next 20 years. Yeah. Oh gosh, there's I guess difficult to pinpoint too many highlights. I mean, there's so many exciting aspects to I think the last 20 years that there's probably quite a few. I guess the one that perhaps Jim is probably thinking I should mention is the getting invited to talk at the UN for on behalf of World Animal Protection and the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, to give a sort of perspective, a kind of commercial perspective on the reuse of ghost gear. Obviously, that was felt very honoured, of course, and also a little scared. But it was actually quite an experience, and obviously one that I'll never forget. Quite a moment. Jim, I expect you've got some other moments.
Well, being a complete geek, the fact that Obi-Wan Kenobi wears Fourth Element, or rather Ewan McGregor wore Fourth Element on his way to go and film Star Wars back in the day, that was a pretty cool early stage highlight. Now, though, I think that the big highlights are when we get to meet divers who are using our product, and to be fair, it's been like this ever since the beginning of it. Who come up to and actually talk to us and tell us how the equipment that we've made has changed the way they dive. Or at the sort of higher level, we're talking to explorers who are taking our product to all sorts of places, and our gear becomes part of the tool set that these guys are using to go and explore some of the unseen parts of our planet. I mean, we've got Jill in the photo there, who's taken our stuff to places no other human being has ever been before. And you yourself, Aaron, I mean, the number of hours, is there anybody with that many hours in Truck Lagoon as you on the Rex Truck? I don't think so.
I definitely, there will be some people, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Mesley's got a few, but between the two of you, there's real exploration there, and we're so proud to be associated with people like that. There's Matt Carter, who, congratulations, Matt, on your PhD.
Yeah, absolutely.
I met him when he was a Rolex scholar, and he's gone on to be working on these incredible preservation projects, trying to deal with these emerging problems of decaying wrecks, not just in Truck, but in other places around the world. And I think for us, it's about being part of these wonderful stories and these adventures that other people are on, and maybe not being on them on them ourselves. And it's a long time since I've done any kind of real exploratory diving, although really enjoyed going wreck hunting, back in the day. But the point of that, point I'm trying to make is that, when our brand is there, when our products are out there on these incredible expeditions, whether it's exploration like that, or indeed on people who are working for making a living from this, from the police forces and all that sort of thing, then it's an incredibly rewarding experience that I hope to continue. And I hope that Fourth Element maintains its feel of being, a brand that people can associate with and can feel close to as well.
And to wrap this up, I know there's probably a lot of young viewers watching, maybe some designers, maybe people that want to start their own brand. Do you have any advice for them, for the viewers watching?
Think carefully.
Not too many secrets, though.
But always believe in yourself. That's it. The crucial thing for both Striking and I think somebody once said to us, what's the secret of your success? At which point I looked over my shoulder to try and work out who they were talking to, but then realized it was us. And one of the things that we in the early days, we didn't really know what we were doing, but we worked hard at it and kept working at it, and believing in it to the point that actually our belief in what we were doing and the hard work was enough to get us most of the way. And then we were fortunate. We had a good product, and we had some good ideas, and we met lots of people along the way who wanted to support our ideas and wanted to work with us. And now we count these people as our friends and our colleagues. I think, but yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah,
and believe in yourself.
Yeah, and I think when I said think carefully, I mean I meant that in effect in all ways. I know it was slightly humorous, but do think it through. Think whatever your challenges are, think them through. Think carefully. Listen to people, ask questions, and make your best decision. And as Jim said, don't give up. Have the belief that once you've made these decisions, to push hard and see them through to some sort of fruition. And hopefully you make more good decisions than bad decisions, and learn from your bad decisions.
Find people that are better at things than you are.
Yeah,
that's helped us finding people that are better than us.
Totally.
Totally. Definitely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Nice one, guys. I'm just looking at the clock now. I think we actually ran out of time. So I kind of have to take the opportunity to just say, thank you, Jim, thank you, Paul, for taking the time, of your busy work schedule to communicate with our audience and talk a little bit about Fourth Element and the rest of it. And yeah, just thanks so much for coming.
It's a pleasure, Aaron.
Yeah, been a pleasure. Thank you very much for asking.
Nice one, guys. I'll see you in a bit. Hope to see you soon in a dive show, hopefully.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
Nice one. Well, there you go, guys. I think we're running out of time. I just want to thank you for coming to the fourth installation of Coming Clean with the Dirty Dozen. Again, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Paul, for coming. It was a fascinating insight in how a diving manufacturer operates and grows within the industry. I want to remind you guys, if you missed part of this episode, you can catch up on YouTube. If you just YouTube the Dirty Dozen Expeditions, we have all the episodes there. You can click on the subscribe and bell button to get notifications and the rest of it. But I want to also talk to you about Thursday. So we have an interview with none other than Richie Kohler, who's going to be talking to us about 40 years of shipwreck diving, or exploring. And it's Thursday, the 30th of April, 7 p.m. GMT, 8 p.m. London, 3 p.m. New York, and all the rest of it. That's it for tonight. I'm your host, Aron Arngrimsson. Stay safe in these wild times. Take care of yourself and each other. And if you feel lonely, we're here to chat dirty. See you later, guys.